The phase 2 program moved us further to the west into the West Atlantic Graben, and that's when we started seeing these thick packages of oxidized volcanics in there. And that's when we brought Gary Simmons into this program, looking at the metallurgical scenarios, both for the higher grade silica breccias as well as for the tend to be lower grade volcanic. Gary Simmons is probably the most experienced metallurgist still practicing.
My expertise, so to speak, is process development. So the geologists find the ore, the miners mine it, and I help them figure out how to get the economic values out of that in a commercial sense that can make money. So I've been doing this approaching 40 years. I've worked all over the world. I've worked on dozens of developments, reviewed hundreds of projects, and I retired as the Director of Metallurgy and Technology for Newmont. Nevada King contacted me about 2 or 3 years ago to see if I would help them work on the metallurgical development of the Atlanta project.
Well, those are right on the high wall. Those are in it, so are these outside of it?
I'm familiar with the Atlanta project because I visited it many years ago while it was operating. I was interested because I knew the area was underexplored and had not received much attention since the operational days, other than some drilling by a few companies that came through. I knew that this project from my previous history was going to need something that they weren't necessarily aware of that could be available to work on Atlanta. And having known Atlanta, I just thought that it would be a good fit for me to help them out on trying to develop that project. To start, we pulled a few thousand assay samples and had them run to the lab for cyanide solubility to find out whether this deposit that they were drilling was an oxide deposit or a sulfide deposit or a mixed deposit. And essentially what those results told us is everything that they were drilling, with the exception of a pretty small portion, was all oxide and didn't show any evidence of carbon of any significance or anything like that. So knowing it was oxide and fairly simple, we decided to go ahead with the bulk sampling and a phase 1 met core drilling program. Knowing that it was hard to brace it from the past, I sensed that conventional crushing and heap leaching of the silica breccia was probably not a viable route, and we had to be looking at more intensive options for crushing to see if we could heap leach the lower grade. And that's what led us eventually into testing high pressure grinding roll, conventional milling, and conventional crushing options on those 3 bulk samples to guide us with where to go and what to do when we started the testing on the met core. Results from the 3 bulk samples showed distinctively that milling was fine. We were getting mid-80s to low 90s for recovery at conventional milling sizes of 200 mesh. But crushing and leaching the silica breccia was not very successful, getting low recoveries. And by applying high pressure grinding roll to that silica breccia, we could improve the low grade recoveries by 10 or 20%, getting them into the 65-70% recovery range, which would make them suitable for HPGR crush in a conveyor stack heap leach. High pressure grinding roll, it's a perfect bullseye fit for highly silicified and abrasive rocks. It is much more economic from a capital and an operating perspective on these types of ore types, and they're proven successful. And literally, they have changed the maintenance cycles from measured in a few weeks to as many as months or a year or two before they have to do major maintenance on these rolls, depending upon the material types, obviously, and how abrasive it is. But essentially, the technology has eliminated the high maintenance and operating costs associated with that. These gold deposits are mostly silicified, or they're silicified dolomites or hard dolomites at Atlanta. So they're a bullseye target for the high pressure grinding roll technology. We tested 19 composites in phase 1, a series of bottle rolls, conventional crush column leaching, and HPGR crush column leaching. Confirmed our anticipation that the volcanics acted more like conventional heap leach materials across central Nevada, Carlin-style materials, where they achieved reasonably high recoveries, 70s and 80s in the laboratory on conventional crushed materials, and projecting those to run of mines. The run of mine recoveries are very good, and the volcanics appear to be very amenable to low-grade run of mine heap leaching. The higher grade recovery increases by about 10-15% depending on the grade, and that material would be suitable for milling. So we ended up with a scenario out of phase one where milling the high-grade volcanics and run-of-mine heap leaching the low-grade volcanics will probably be a suitable route for processing those material types. When we looked at the silica breccias and one or two of the high silica composites that are slightly above the unconformity, we determined that they were amenable to milling just like the old operations had proved. Mid-80s to low 90s recovery at a conventional 200 mesh grind size. And one thing that we found out is that for the silica breccias, the higher grade material, the gold is more locked in the silica than it is as the grade drops. So as the grade drops in the silica breccia, the recovery via conventional or HPGR crushing improves over the high grade, and you actually get a very favorable response of the silica breccias at somewhere at 1.5 grams or less. We achieved a 71% column leach recovery on an HPGR product from the silica breccias. So we certainly found out during this phase of test work that the high grade silica breccias need to go through a mill, and the low grade needs to go through HPGR crushing and then go into a configure stack heap leach. Going forward, obviously, we need more variability samples and testing to cover a broader range of both silica breccias and volcanics so we can continue to develop the flow sheet and optimize the conditions for how this project should run. Listen, Atlanta is, in my opinion, typical Nevada-hosted gold deposit. There are deposits in Nevada that are amenable to high-pressure grinding and roll technology. One project uses it already. Like I say, I've tested another project where I've recommended that they use it on one of their deposits. So Atlanta is no different. Atlanta has the volcanics, which is typical, easy mining, easy recovery, heap leach recovery on the volcanics. But the high pressure grinding roll is one of those hard nuts to crack, okay, that you just need better technology to crush it finer at a lower cost. So I don't consider Atlanta any different than other things I've seen in Nevada. Nevada is quite variable in its hosted mineral deposits, so this is just another one of those that fits in the hard and abrasive category, and there are a few of those in Nevada.